Join me as I dive deep into the surprising truths about rock and roll that no one ever talks about. Rock and roll, a genre that's often misunderstood, but what if I told you there's more to it than just loud guitars and crazy antics on stage? Today, I'm going to reveal the astonishing truths behind this iconic genre, and trust me, you won't be disappointed. One of the biggest myths about rock and roll is that it's just a bunch of noise, that it's all about rebellion and anarchy, and that it has no real cultural significance. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is that rock and roll is a complex and multifaceted genre that has been shaped by a wide range of influences and has played a significant role in shaping our culture. Another common misconception about rock and roll is that it's a predominantly white, male-dominated genre. And while it's true that many of the most famous rock artists are white men, the truth is that rock and roll has its roots in African American music, and many of its most influential artists have been women and people of color. Then there's the idea that rock and roll is all about individualism and nonconformity, that it's a genre that rejects mainstream values. But the truth is that rock and roll has always been a genre that's deeply connected to the world around it, that it has reflected and shaped the cultural and social movements of its time. And finally, there's the notion that rock and roll is just a form of entertainment, that it's all about having a good time and letting loose. But the truth is that rock and roll has always been a powerful tool for social change, that it has inspired generations of activists and artists to challenge the status quo and fight for a better world. So where did this incredible genre come from? Well, the story of rock and roll begins in the 1940s and 50s, when African American artists like Chuck Berry and Little Richard began experimenting with new sounds and styles. These pioneers of rock and roll drew on a wide range of influences, from blues and country to gospel and rhythm and blues, to create a unique and explosive sound. As rock and roll continued to evolve, it absorbed influences from all over the world, from Latin American rhythms to British folk music. It was a genre that was always on the move, always adapting and changing, and that's what made it so exciting. From the Rolling Stones to Led Zeppelin, from Jimi Hendrix to The Who, rock and roll has been shaped by some of the most innovative and creative artists of the past century. But rock and roll wasn't just about the music, it was also about the cultural and social movements that it inspired. From the hippie counterculture of the 1960s to the punk revolution of the 1970s, rock and roll has always been at the forefront of social change. It's a genre that's inspired generations of young people to challenge the status quo, to question authority, and to fight for a better world. One of the most surprising truths about rock and roll is the way it has been used as a tool for social change. From the civil rights movement to the anti-war movement, rock and roll has been a powerful force for activism and protest. And yet, this aspect of rock and roll is often overlooked, even by fans of the genre. But the most astonishing truth about rock and roll is the way it has been shaped by some of the most unlikely artists. From the pioneering women of rock and roll like Sister Rosetta Tharpe and Wanda Jackson, to the overlooked artists of color who helped to shape the genre, rock and roll has been a genre that's been driven by a diverse range of creative voices. In conclusion, rock and roll is so much more than just a genre of music, it's a cultural force that has shaped our world in profound ways. From its origins in African American music to its role in shaping social change, rock and roll is a complex and multifaceted genre that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. So what surprised you the most about rock and roll? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to learn more about the history of music, be sure to check out my video on the evolution of hip-hop.